everybody. Welcome to Conventional Wisdom Sucks. I'm Ann Riley, and I'm really happy to be here today. Today, we are going to continue our discussion about the existence of God. Last time, we left our early humans creating the concept of God to answer the question about why they exist on Earth. And today, we're going to try and figure out how that simple concept evolved into the very complex religions we have today, and the very universal acceptance of God as a omnipotent being. So, in order to do that, we're going to have to look at human ideas. And human ideas evolve just like life forms on Earth. So we know that life forms started simple as a disorganized cell, evolved into organized cells, and then later on into multicellular creatures like humans and tigers. Well, ideas do the very same thing. They evolve simply and then grow more complex with time. So we can look as an example at human communication. We started with language, and then we developed writing, and then we developed books, and then we developed radio, and then we developed TV, and then we developed the internet and the computer. And the evolution always works that way, sort of simple and then complex to complex. But there's one big difference between ideas and life forms. So when life exists, it's always tested by the environment around it. If a life form can't live in the conditions, whether it's temperature or humidity or radiation on Earth, or it can't survive among competitors, or can not be eaten by prey, then it will make it. Okay. On the other hand, so it's constantly tested, but ideas don't quite work that way. An idea may be right or wrong. It may be true or false. It doesn't get tested like life forms do. All an idea needs to survive in the human environment is that it be accepted by others. And this is very important. There's no quality check on ideas like there is in nature. Okay? So what happened with religion is people accepted it as true, even though it wasn't provable. It wasn't a provable fact, but they accepted it as true. So when this happens, when an idea is accepted as true, but it's not actually provable and true, some different things happen. In this case, as we look at the history of humans, we see that a couple of really important things happened. One is that as soon as you created this concept of religion where some people knew the religion and other people didn't, you create this information gap. And in that information gap, there is the opportunity to exploit individuals or to leverage your knowledge because they don't have that knowledge. And so what happens is that when people are accepted as knowing these ideas about God, they also were given the power. They were given permission to lead. They became the leaders, and they got more resources. They got power. Okay, and that is a very strong force that changed the dynamic of the relationship among the people. The second thing that happened, and I think that's very important, is that when people learn to accept something as true, even though it wasn't factually true, it was pretty easy. It wasn't a big leap to give them more and more of these rules about what God is or isn't, and they would accept them because they're primed to accept things that aren't necessarily true. And this is, I think, one of the universal conditions that early humans developed for many, many, many years. It's a mindset that I think still exists today, that you don't have to accept facts. You can accept things as true even though that we don't have any way to prove them. And science, which is based on proof, right, comes much, much later in the game. So people develop this very sort of plastic ability to accept things that weren't true as true. Okay, The last thing that's really important when you accept ideas that aren't provably true is that people can disagree, and there's nothing to tie them, to anchor them to any kind of truth. So conflicts arise and people disagree about stuff they can't even prove. So it makes sense that ideas about God would keep diverging over time. And we see this in the history. The Muslim religion split into Sunni and Shia. Judaism split off Christianity. Christianity, in turn, split off Catholicism and Protestantism. There's nothing to anchor any of these ideas except people's preferences or concerns. It's really, really difficult to nail down a religious belief to any kind of fact. So it's going to be a idea that generates conflict and generates diversity over time. So this is the way humans were evolving, with religion as sort of the major idea that was propelling humanity through the years. And then at the same time, coming along slowly behind it is the concepts of science and math, right? And that people are developing this ideas. And in this time, the way they develop it is they have to prove it, right? They're identifying facts of nature that exist around them, and they're creating the ways to measure them so that they can get a solid base that's anchored in repeatability and reliability. And this was very different. So when these two forces sort of met around the time of the Renaissance, I think, where there was a lot of development in science and a very powerful church, there was a big conflict. And what happened with this over time, I think, is that science has been chipping away at some of the answers that religion had, but religion itself has not been chipped away. The existence of God seems very, very strong today, even as science chips away at the what was originally you remember the question was, why are we here? Or, what is this earth about? Well, they've been answering all these questions. But the religion, it's so deep in us that it still exists. So what we're left with here is really that the concept of God is not provable. And if it's not provable, it becomes a choice for each individual to make and to consider for their own life. The problem we have is that religion has a long history of learning at making sure that they can continue their success. And how do they do that? They continue their success by making sure that parents teach their children from a very young age about religion and about God, because by the time they get old enough to question these things, if they do, it's so deep in them that they might not even question it. Second, they make sure that they go out all over and recruit believers and convert people to their beliefs so that they can continue to have great numbers and the resources that come with great numbers and the power that comes with great numbers. And second, if they did find dissent, they would crush it. And they would, if you were not a believer, or you didn't agree with them, they tried to, we have many instances in history where the religious forces have tried to crush dissent. The Crusades is a perfect example of one religion trying to destroy another religion. And, they're both not based in fact, it's just people's beliefs. The last thing that they tried to do was where and this is kind of with respect to science, that information came along that sort of questioned the authority or the knowledge or the realm of the religion's kind of area, and they would try to crush it. So there was a time, especially during the Renaissance, where they tried to really crush the knowledge and the fields of science that were growing. But this is the problem with science. It's repeatable, it's reliable, it doesn't go away. So what we've got today is a very strong uh, realm of science and a very strong realm of religion, but they don't really mesh, and I think it's causing some conflicts today. But where we're left again is that religion, the concept of God, is not a provable one. So what it does is it requires that people choose for themselves how they want to believe, and that is free for people to believe. But I think that people should understand that God is a concept. It's not a fact. It's a concept, and as such, you get to choose how you want it to work in your life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as a factual concept, I think we have to say that that is not something we can say. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Jesus walked on the earth and he was real. Well, I don't know that, any of those things are true. I do know that Jesus may have existed, but was he God is not a provable thing. A person exists, but a person as God is a pretty hard thing to prove. And all of the writings about the Bible that people read were written hundreds of years after Jesus existed. So there is no proof. And in that way, that we can say like 2 + 2 = 4. We just don't have it. And that doesn't mean you throw the whole concept out. It just means that you have to understand that there's no proof and you have to figure out how it works with you. That's all. Okay, so that is where I come down with on the conventional wisdom of the existence of God. So my next question, and what we're going to deal with next time, is, so if we don't have the concept of God, what do we have as a foundation for humans to live by? We'll tackle that one next time. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for joining me.